topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. It's Tuesday morning, and I'm thrilled to be here with you. It is Thanksgiving week, and I gotta share, it's one of the favorite times of the year. We get to be grateful. And one thing that I've found is that every morning I make a point to include gratitude in my morning routine. And whenever I do it, my day starts out so beautifully. And some days when I forget, I found that the day doesn't go as mindful as I would like it to be. So I invite you to take a moment and find things that you're grateful for. So first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of our show and our family, because without you, the show would not be possible. And thank you, Juan, for making the show technically possible. And of course, all our wonderful guests who bring their experiences and expertise. So I want to wish each and every one of you a beautiful Thanksgiving with your loved ones. And as part of our thanks, I invite you and highly encourage you to share 1 hour of your time with no strings attached and helping somebody out. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Dawn.
Welcome. Thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. It's a joy to have you. So, Dawn, usually we start out in the childhood. Do you recall a moment from your young days when you were a kid? Is there any moment or any person that stands out for you even today?
Oh, wow. Anybody. Let's see. For me, it's not very, it's kind of cliche, but I hung out with my grandma a lot. She looked out for me quite a lot in my youth, and we spent a lot of time together. And thank you for what you're saying about having about the thanks in the heart and the morning gratitude, because I too practice that, and it has changed my life for the better. So my grandmother was a lady who was educated at a time where that wasn't normal, and she did a lot of good in the world. So she's kind of my hero for sure.
Grandparents are precious. And I have to say that I didn't get to spend as much time with my grandma, but the moments that I recall are still fresh in my memory and so precious, so precious. So as you grew up, Dawn, where did your interest lie?
I think I've always been a little bit of a investigator. It's always been inside of me. I've always been able to know and see when, this isn't quite right. Have like this little intuition or radar inside of me. I'm sure I was quite the bossy boots young girl. But
Okay, so you mentioned about being investigative. And in terms of like when you were in high school, did you have any interest in particular subjects, any career that you took?
So I guess the other part of me is that I've always been a little bit of a peacemaker in my family. Seems like I grew up in this household full of loud voices where I don't know, I kind of lived in my own little bubble. And I always managed to tune all of that out. So I guess that part of me actually makes sense to me now that you're talking to me about it because of what I do in life and how I like to help people be able to get what they want, and be able to make the world a better place at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just kind of going back to learning, like, who is Dawn?
Oh, okay. Right.
Let's kind of take a peek in your journey and tell us a little bit about, like, your life journey, like, as you grew up, what interests did you have, and where did your life take you?
Okay. I loved school. Um, not in high school. I've been on my own since an early age, um, like mostly since I was about the age of almost 15.
Mm.
So I'm kind of scrappy, and that I had to grow up fast and kind of learn about life a little bit. But for I guess the thing that turns me into me is school. Most of my great mentors in life I met at jobs that I had or professors that I met in school. And I really excelled that way. But mostly I excelled in school because I had what was called an exemplary scholarship. And that scholarship, I had to compete for my grade point average. And so if my grade point average fell below a 396, I would lose my scholarship to someone more competitive than me. And so that taught me how to fight for what I want in life. Um, I didn't even know I was smart until I took a math class in college, and I was afraid of it. And I expressed my concerns to my professor, and he was like the football coach, and he'd like slap you on the back and be like, "Oh, whatever, you'll be fine." And then after I took my first exam, he did that. He kind of smacked me on the back and was like, "I told you you had some brains in there." And I was like, "Ding, I do." Changed my life, and he probably has no idea. And I couldn't even tell you his name to this day. He's just the football coach. So, yeah.
He was there for you. And that's the key. So many times we underestimate the power we have. And here's the thing, folks, that just by being present, and you don't even have to lead by example, just by being present, just by being who you are, by being authentic, you can influence so many people. So
Mhm.
tell us more about, like, your couple of your other favorite mentors through the college, and what was your major?
Okay. So, I was a tax accounting major, and then for my master's, I did an MBA. That's a Master's of Business Administration, and that was a very pivotal time in my life because um, I had a mentor there. I actually went through a program for mentorship, and I worked with a few different teachers. But one day, my program director, who was a mentor of mine, pulled me aside and said, "Dawn, you can write." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? That's the most technical, boring paper you're holding out to me. Like it's the worst paper ever." And he's like, "No, you can write, and your classmates have noted it." And he's like, "If you would like to try writing a novel, I could make that 2 credits of your schooling, but you can't graduate if you don't finish it." So I was like, "What am I supposed to write about? I don't have time to write a novel." But I did. But then the more he said that, the more I realized that like I've always been a writer my whole life. Like I was always writing these big long stories to my little friends in school about our futures and kind of ridiculous things. But he So that's what I did. I wrote the worst first novel ever. No one should ever read it, and it's stuffed under the mattress where it belongs. But it was practice. Stephen King says the first million words are practice, and he's right. So, and that's how you become a decent writer.
Well, being a writer myself, I can definitely attest to that. And here's the thing that you're always continuously improving. There is never a stop.
Right.
It's that you achieved a peak or you achieved a greatness or something like that. But in that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
we are like onions. I'm not saying that we all smell, but it's almost like peeling layer of onion, where as you peel one layer, you can see something else. And it's amazing. Human capacity is tremendous that so many people don't recognize their potential. And see over here, what happened was a mentor gave you the opportunity that you didn't even know would come your way.
That's right.
And you took that opportunity, you wrote it, and from there your career. Let's hear about that. As you graduated from your MBA, where did
Well,
your life take you?
yes. So I eventually became a CPA, but before that, I got my fraud examiner's license, and it's a study of criminology and a study of fraud, and I work fraud cases and I do fraud trainings for corporate clients, and that's kind of where my career has taken me. But I've done tax audit in the past. I was a corporate controller for a public company for a time. Like, I have some pretty good experience in there. But I really feel like this is where my life calling has kind of taken a swerve for the better. And it kind of happened because I had a small firm and I was trying to do the, oh, let's do taxes thing. And and I ended up having to fire my top client, um, who was basically keeping my company alive, because they were doing some shady things that I couldn't put my name on and still be a fraud examiner and have a conscience. And so I ended up saying, hey, this isn't for me. You're going to have to make some changes or we're going to have to part ways. And sometimes in life, that's the top thing you have to do is listen to your gut. That's one of my rules, but probably one of the top ones, to be able to say, and so I walked away from that client, and because of that, like, it came back to me in spades that the attorney that I worked with through their company was like, huh, okay. And he started sending people my way because he knew that I would do amazing work for them and that it would be honest work. So, but
Well, that's a great story, Dawn, because here's the thing. So many times what happens, especially in today's world, everybody is putting things out there. Oh yeah, give me your 5 minutes a day, or give me X, Y, and
Mhm.
Z, and I'll solve all your problems. And of course, there are some people are providing solutions to those problems. That said, those are cookie cutter
Yeah.
solutions, and there may be some good solutions out in there. I'm not saying that all are cut from the same cloth, and yet at the same time it's so important to decipher between the two things. So
Mhm.
one is what you shared was character, that even if you're going for short term things, because it's possible. So for example, what we did was, let's say if you're reading books, and this is like, kind of completely off the cuff over here, but when you're like, you want to gain knowledge, you want to be getting that unfair advantage over others. So what you do is you go sit down, you acquire knowledge, you increase your skill sets, you increase your capacity, you increase your performance and productivity. That takes time. As they say, it takes 10,000 hours. So let's say even if you're sitting and reading books, it will take you easily 3 to 4 hours if you're reading a self-help book and digest it.
Mhm.
Now, what we did was we sat down, we distilled the wisdom from those books into a bite sized
Right.
knowledge for people. And what that does is it gives people the fresh ideas. And like now, once you have taken a look at all of those, then you can decide, oh, you know what? These 9 to 10 books really are resonating with me, and then you can definitely do a deeper dive. But what you're doing is you're cutting through the noise. So same way, like, what you're talking about, it's so important to have that character. So yes, you can go for those 4 or 5 minute things, but it's important to have depth as you're building your breadth. So it's super important what you talked about, having that character and going through it and seeing, who's the real deal. So as you found out
Mm-hmm.
about that, how should I share? The
Well,
fraud, like, the person that who was
oh,
doing so,
yes.
and you were dependent. How did you come to that decision that I don't want to work with this client?
Oh, just because I feel like it's important to have a good reputation. I once had the Alabama SEC declare me as the only person in the whole big mess that had any, quote, moral turpitude. So I would like to keep my reputation of having moral turpitude. So it was a simple decision, and I always listen to that whenever I feel like something is off, because I've learned to trust my inner radar since I was a young kid. Like I've always spotted fraud wherever I go. If I walk into a business and I start looking around, I'm like, I don't think that secretary can afford that purse or those shoes. What's going on here? And like it's a natural suspicious side of me. Not that I'm a pessimist, just that I like it's a professional scrutiny, I guess you would call it. So um, but I have changed. Like I I want the thing that I'm sharing with people is how like the fraudster uses a lot of different tactics against people. And I feel like ordinary people like you and I can use those skills as well in an ethical manner to help us get what we want in life. And those are some of the things that I like to talk about to help people out.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a good thing to have. And that goes back to having those core values. I want to touch upon very quickly is that how you said that it was a simple decision because it was one of the core values that I want to live by integrity. And that is so important because when you are being a business owner or a professional, working professional doesn't matter. Having integrity goes long ways because you can, at the end of the day, look at yourself in the mirror, meet your own eyes, and say that, I did my best
Hmm.
and I let go of things that were not in alignment with my integrity. So, this is good. So, tell us when you're talking about how people like us can learn from these fraudsters, like what are the few qualities?
Okay. I would like to share a few of the rules that I follow that kind of and explain how the fraudster thinks and how we can apply that to us. And I have a story I can share, for those things that we can carry through. So like it actually goes back to grad school again for me. I took an elective class called negotiations, and this teacher was all about dealing with unions and stuff. And I had no real interest in that, but he had a day where he was like, ladies, we're going to have a chat, because he's like, listen up, ladies, you boys, you work on this thing. We're going to chat over here. And he said, you have a natural inability to ask for what you want. He said, most women, they just won't do it. But I would like to amend that a little bit and say, to anyone who's feeling timid, this is good advice. And I think there are a lot of people who qualify in that department, not just women. So the thing he said to us was, no is not no until you have heard it 4 times. And let me explain that a little bit. The average fraudster knows that a person has a harder time saying no every time he forces them to do it. But he's also smart enough to say, okay, how can I help persuade this person? I'm not just going to ask the same question 4 times. I'm going to be clever and show how it's mutually beneficial for us to work together. And maybe he has ulterior motives, but we would not. And I think the average person can say to themselves, well, if it's harder and harder for a person to say no, then I need to be smarter about what I'm going to say, how I'm going to ask for it a second time, and or a third time. And I'll tell you, the fraudster is not shy about doing that, and neither should you be. And so our professor assigned us an assignment, and he said, I want you to go and get something that you don't think you can get. You're going to ask for it on 3 different things. And so that was our assignment. We had to go and get something we didn't think we could get and report back about it. And that was amazing exercise for me. Like, I'm sure I did some trite little thing, like I managed to persuade a professor who never gives an extension on papers to give me an extension. Like, I mean, it wasn't anything super serious. In my career, I've used that many times. Like, for example, I wanted to talk to the CEO of a company because I needed information. It was a public company, but I needed information for a case I was working. And it wasn't related to them, but it was information that could help me. And but I couldn't get through his gatekeepers for anything. And I was like, okay, it's time for me to be creative because I need an answer here. And excuse me, I just needed to have a conversation. And so I ended up, and you're going to think I'm kind of crazy, but fraudsters, if all else fails, they use the mail. So I turned around and said, okay, I'm going to use the mail. And I made this little website with a tantalizing message that I knew would help the person I wanted to talk to. And, I had to be creative about it. I was like, I had to stop and say, what is my leverage? Which I'm going to talk about leverage as well. That's my other rule. Fraudsters never are afraid to use leverage. And we're afraid to as human beings because we think of it as kind of squeezing somebody, but it's not. You have to think of leverage as a tool that helps both you and the person you want something from, both of you, to get what that person wants as well. So you have to think, oh, what can help this person out? What can help their customer out or their family out or whoever it is you're dealing with? And so I put together my leverage and I said, okay, this person can benefit from the information that I have in this way. And so I put that information in a tantalizing way on a little website with a code to open the website. And then I mailed, do you know what are those called? Those things that kids do science fair projects on, the trifold, those big giant cardboard, those cardboard things. I drew a giant red question mark on it and I put the name of that website at the bottom and I mailed it to him. And I know it sounds crazy, but I needed to have a conversation and I needed some information. And so I just waited. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, I got a phone call from that person's assistant or secretary or whatever. And I was able to, and she was like, we got your message and we read your message on the website and that's very interesting to us. And so I was able to have a conversation, and without that person knowing it, they were able to answer my question and I was able to help benefit them as well. So it's about creativity and wanting truly to benefit you and the other person as well. Divya, I love what you said about the rising tide that lifts all boats or something like that in your writings and on one of your other shows that you had said. And I think that's a very important rule. In order to use the skill of the fraudster ethically, we have to want to rise the tide of all. And my number one rule about all of it is, if you run across a person in life, they should be the better off for having met you and never the opposite. So
Absolutely. Having that interaction. And thank you for sharing that. I really like how you talked about creativity and using the leverage. So when you're creative and you are still in integrity and you're thinking about how you can help other people, then even if you are creating shortcuts or if you're reaching out to them creatively, like you mentioned, it is an integrity of who you are. Because at the end of it, the intention and the result is a win-win situation. So that makes definitely good sense. So tell us, what are the other rules for negotiation?
I would love to. Some of them seem a little bit, you've probably heard some of them before, but they're good rules. And like the next one is you should always ask for more than what you want. Because, and I'll explain that from the perspective of a fraudster. And that is that a fraudster, so for example, say you're interviewing somebody who's committed fraud and you're about to get to the point where you're trying to figure out how much they actually took or whatever their particular crime was, in the white collar or blue collar departments, or pink collar for that matter. So if you throw out a number, they will never increase that number, and they will never admit to fully what they have done. But if you like throw out a much bigger number than you think that they have taken, then they will always say, "Oh, no," it gives them a chance to appear morally better than you assumed them to be. And so
Mm,
they will take that, they'll say, "No, oh, it was a much lower number. I didn't take that much." And so now you have a partial confession in there. And that's actually a really important thing is if you give somebody who's committed a wrong a moral reason for doing it, they'll latch onto it, even if it's not true, because it helps them to be able to make confession. Um, but that's kind of beside the point there. But so for asking for more than what you want, like for example, when I first got my CPA license, that's leverage to me. I went in and I was like, well, I don't think I earn enough now because my qualifications have increased. So I printed off a bunch of job options that were out in my community and I took them into my employer and I said, these are the options available to me. Do you think you can match that? And 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 he's like, what number are you really trying to get to? And I was like, this one. And it was more than I thought I could get. And but by the end of the day, he had agreed. So like it's not, you have to not be afraid to just well it up and say what you want. People appreciate upfrontness. They appreciate when you just like are honest and truthful and say, well, this is the situation and this is what I think could happen. I'm not going to quit on you today, but these are my options. And it turned out to be to my benefit. But that actually rolls me over to another rule of mine, and that is that um, be diplomatic and kind, because after I did that, my employer gave me some feedback. He was like, Dawn, I got to tell you, sometimes you can talk a little bit tough to people. Like, be a little sweeter. And like I was like, be sweet, be a little sweeter. You could be nicer, or something to that effect. And I kind of thought the slight feminist in me was like, my blood was boiling a little bit that he would say that to me. But then I was like, this is legitimate information and for ladies again, like, or maybe someone who just doesn't feel super confident, like, that's legit information that I can use. And a fraudster does that. They'll say, well, that might be offensive to me personally, but I think I can make use of that information and say, well, maybe you do catch more flies with honey. And I've found that it is true. When you're working in industry or talking to men, they just expect women to be a little bit sweeter. So it's a good strategy that you can employ to your benefit. So you're actually using it, back against them. But I don't like to think of it that way either. So
Here's the thing. Let's ponder over that piece a little bit.
mhm.
It's so important to be who you are, being authentic.
Yes.
And being sweeter is not part of you. And yet, if you go by the core values, that it's important to be respectful, it's important to be warm and provide the dignity to another human being. Doesn't matter whether they're a man or a woman, because sometimes what happens is in the quest of equality, we lose the essence of who we are. So it's super important to kind of remove those glasses or lenses that we're looking the world from. That,
Mhm.
oh, I'm a woman and this needs to happen, or I'm a man and this is how it should be. It's like identifying who you are. What are your core values and are you operating from that? Because I want to go back to the story that you had initially mentioned,
Okay.
that the client was doing shady things. It was against your value and integrity. It was a simple decision. So same thing
Mhm.
can be brought in. And there may be a few members of our audience who may be thinking, I don't need to be sweet. So I wanted to address that. And no, you don't need to be sweet. And think about it that way, that if somebody were to come and be rude to you, how would you feel? So
That's right.
all I say is that think about how you're behaving to other people. Is that something you'd like to be treated as? And you may be, but is
Mhm.
that the right way to do it? So aligning your respect for others and aligning who you are can take you long ways. What are your thoughts?
I agree. Respect does go a long way. That respect for also somebody's culture and other things like that as well. Like, for example, one time we were looking to find an investor for a business we were thinking of doing. And, but that investor, although he spoke perfectly good English, he also spoke, it might give things away if I say the language. So it was another language that we were not familiar with. So we got ourselves somebody who was a like an interpreter, and that person taught us 5 phrases. And when he was in the room, when we were doing our presentation, if he said something, sometimes he would hold up a note, like he'd like scratch his head with 2 fingers, and we'd be like, "Oh, answer number 2," and we'd use that answer in his language, and it impressed him so much that we took the time to learn a little bit about his language and his culture that he turned out to be the right investor for us. And a little respect goes a long way, and that is like the key of diplomacy right there. So thank you for saying that for sure. And
Absolutely. And
even
this story definitely proves a point that when you're respecting somebody, it does not take anything away from you. All it does is enhances the person you are and it
Mhm.
helps you build your character.
And relationships, like
Yep.
you never burning bridges is probably one of the worst decisions you'll ever make in life to me. Um, but yes, so thank you for that. Let's see.
Are
So
there any other rules that you'd like to share?
I think I kind of already talked about one of them, but I'll cover it a little bit more. It was about listening to your gut, those core values in you that can't be negotiated, and like also not being afraid. Like if you feel like something is super off, and you're in tune with who you are, and you're not really sure of the reason, just give them a just let there be a cooling off period for you to like think things over. Um, Pressure tactics are the number one thing to make me walk away from something, or to make me say, I'm gonna sleep on that, and make sure that it's in align with who I am. I like your word that you use a lot, alignment. I think that's an excellent way of putting it. So and then like let's see. And I always feel like if you're going to do something, make it legendary. Make it great. Like let it be something that you would put down with pride in your book of life, and be able to garner wisdom and share that with your future posterity, or whoever is under your purview of influence. Or just if you're going to do something, man, do it with like awesomeness and all the legendary things that are inside of you, because I know that like a lot of people, they haven't learned how to pull their creativity out of themselves. And it's so important, because that is what will change your life. These rules can help you to negotiate some amazing things that you did not think you could get. And so, the other thing that I always do is I practice every week. I ask for something I don't think I can get every week. And it's amazing what happens. Like one time I was in a contract that turned out not to be a good contract, and I hadn't been able to verify it due to the distance. And when I arrived, it wasn't good. And but that person was like, "Well, I'm going to enforce this in court because you signed this contract." But the contract was kind of contingent on some verbal discussions that we had had that turned out not to be the case. And I was able to, boy, I've kind of lost my train of thought for a second. Oh yeah. Just I felt like something was off and I should have listened to myself. But the thing that really helped me to be able to move forward in that case was not saying, oh, well, she's going to sue me. I'm going to go get a lawyer. It was, okay, how can I help this person get what they want as well? And so I was able to look, I wish I could be more specific in this case, but I don't think I can be. There's always like these confidentiality boundaries that you're crossing.
We understand.
And so, but I ended up calling this person up and saying, listen, let's have a conversation. Tell me what's going on in your head. And because I asked what's going on in your head and was respectful, she gave me the tools that I needed to find my leverage, to find what she needed. And we were able to come to an amicable result that didn't involve litigation, thankfully.
Mm.
So yeah, those are kind of my main rules in life. And just always to, like, the ultimate rule of all is to improve the world. Every person you meet should be better off for having met you, and never the other way around. So just give back, make sure that what you're doing is mutually beneficial for you and your party that you're working with. Otherwise, what are we doing here? What are we even doing here if we're not doing that? So,
Right. Going back to the existential questions. And
Mhm.
again, your story proves that when you are looking out for others, when you are bringing in that element of humanity,
Mhm.
it may not go your way all the time. And yet, at the end of the day, you will be able to sleep with peace that I did the best I could.
Yeah.
And these are some great rules. Dawn, thank you for sharing. If our listeners want to connect with you, anything that you'd like to share about yourself, your business, please go ahead and share.
Okay. Well, if you want to look me up, I have a website that's my name, dawnjrasmussen.com. And if you enjoyed my stories today, I've also written a novel about a fraud examiner who was on the case, and she's described by author Susan Breen as Bridget Jones trained in the art of forensic accounting. So if you like the stories I tell today, then you would enjoy my book as well. Thank you for that. And then I also offer corporate trainings for businesses for small business up to public companies everywhere. So related to catching fraud, and those are fun trainings that usually wow, because I don't just come in and give you a generic training about the fraud triangle. I read your audit. I know who your employees are. I basically work a fraud case on you before I ever do any training for you. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Thank you so much, Divya.
Absolutely. So, where can people find your book and what's the title of your book?
Oh, I'm so sorry. The book is called 12 for 12. Ta-da! And it's available everywhere, mostly Amazon or Barnes & Noble. So yes, thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we
Happy
wish you all the
Thanksgiving,
best.
everyone out there. I do feel a life full of things. I love this holiday because it gives you a chance to really reflect more than you do every morning in your daily gratitude minutes. So yes, thanks so much. And I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving and holidays.
Thank you. Well, listeners, thank you for being part of our family. I wish each and every one of you happy Thanksgiving and a week full of joys and health. So do reach out to us as to how we can help you. How can we make you live the life that you deserve and help you achieve the goals that you want to achieve and make those dreams come true. And thank you, Juan. And I want to thank everyone. So let's make this season a joyous season by helping each other and being thankful. Until next time, take care and be well.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.